Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Utah Stories Show. So, the past few weeks, we've been covering what's going on at the downtown homeless shelters as they prepare for wintertime. And we've had on the program Bob Danielson, who is a area business owner. He has a business just west of the Gail Miller Resource Center. And he talked about how horrible it is just out around the perimeter of the Gail Miller Resource Center and how there's so much drug activity, so much crime. He's been a victim of crime. He's been attempted muggings have happened to him on several occasions. And then he showed me footage of a woman with a machete trying to scale his chain link fence and break into his building, and all the businesses around the area are suffering big time from homeless people breaking in using rocks, camping along the perimeter, making fires. That was our last episode. And before that, Daniel On was on. Daniel On was running for Salt Lake County District Attorney. And she pointed out that a lot of violent homeless criminals are preying on the temporary homeless who actually want to get back on their feet, get jobs, and they're not getting it. They're not getting those jobs. They're taking their jobs because they're being victimized by the violent predators who are also homeless, or the people who are very addicted to drugs or have psychological disorders. But there's sheeps and there's wolves out there, and there needs to be a clear distinction between the two, and that's not happening right now because there's a breakdown in our criminal justice system. And as Daniel On put it, there are people who are above the law and there's people who are below the law, and they're just not locking up these violent offenders. And sadly, she did not win for Salt Lake County District Attorney, but we're going to have her back on the show to talk about these problems, and we're going to be updating you on also a lot of more evidence I've gotten that there is a serial killer of homeless people. I talked to several more people about it. As I've stated, every single person in the homeless community says indeed this is happening. The police will not give me the data on murder victims who are homeless people. It's really been a weird story to follow because the mainstream local media absolutely will not touch this story with a 10-foot pole because the police department for the Salt Lake City PR department does not want to go there. So we will keep following it for you, and we will update you on that likely next week. We're trying to get some data, a little bit of data at least from the Salt Lake City Police Department. So we'll be sharing that with you as soon as we can. But there is hope for homeless people. There's two really great things I want to tell you about. The first is the passage of the Other Side Village tiny home community by the Salt Lake City Council. That is going to move forward. It's on Indiana Avenue. They have 40 acres. They're going to develop 5 acres, and they're going to have 55 or 58 units available likely this spring. And as long as that goes well, they'll expand to something like 400 units. And the homeless people I talk to say that is such an awesome program. They would love to get into a tiny home. They would love to get off the streets and into something like a tiny home village, tiny home community. And it's really great that finally we were able to pass that, and the city council sees that path moving forward is a great idea. So on the other front for hope for the homeless, I have on the program today Rob Ferris, and Rob started an organization. What is it called again? Advantage Services, right on your shirt. And he gives jobs to homeless people and people who are suffering from psychological disorders. And he's got an incredible nonprofit, and I'm so glad to have you on the program. Thanks for coming on, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
So how did Advantage Services initially come about?
Well, I'd like to take credit, as you just gave me, for starting this organization, but it started 30 years ago. By Valley Mental Health in 1992 to provide employment to people who had stabilized, who were mentally ill, having episodes, and stabilized and needed to get back into the workforce. And so our company was formed to employ these individuals. And over the past 30 years, we've evolved to employ anybody with any disability or any barrier to employment. And in the last, I went to the company, I started in Valley Mental Health, and I moved over in 2010 to Valley Services, which is now Advantage Services. We changed our name, and I took over the company in 2014. And our new niche has been working mainly with a lot of the homeless. So out of my 160 employees, 100 of them are either currently or formerly homeless.
Wow. And I want to get back to more of your story, but I want to talk about something that I feel it's like an elephant in the room that people don't want to talk about. And I encountered it again yesterday out interviewing homeless people. And I want to show you this clip of this gentleman I talked to he's been homeless, I believe, about 4 years. He's a young guy, only 23 years old. And I want to set it up this way. So imagine that you've been homeless and you spend all this time filling out paperwork, going through caseworkers, and finally you get into housing. Finally you get either Section 8 or rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing. And then your caseworker says, yeah, great, now you're in housing. Now go get a job, now that you're stabilized enough. And then, as this guy's told me, he has 5 different caseworkers for 5 different programs he signed up with. And then the caseworker refers to another caseworker. Oh, you know what? Javier, he actually got housing, so he got a really good job, and now he earns enough money, so he doesn't qualify for this housing program anymore. And so Javier's got this job, he started up, he's been doing it for a couple of months, and all of a sudden the rug is pulled out from under him. No more housing. You got to pay the rent 100% all by yourself, even though you're gainfully employed, you don't have enough money saved up, and so you just go back on the streets. And I keep hearing that story over and over again. And it's extremely sad to hear, and I want to play this clip. This was yesterday. In downtown Salt Lake City, a ton of homeless encounters with the police. Again, the police really have their hands full. They're trying to hire 40 more police officers right now. Let me know when you're ready to show the clip. Okay, so this is what it looked like right out in front of St. Vincent's Dining Hall. There were about 7 cop cars, and it turned out a homeless senior had been hit in the head with a baseball bat. The guy's an African-American man. They were questioning people. There's the guy right there who was hit in the head with a baseball bat. But I went and interviewed Javier, and this is what he had to say.
Have you seen anybody who's been able to get into housing who's been homeless with you, perhaps?
Yeah.
You know,
but like then they're just stuck in housing, and then they're like.
So he says, "Is my mic
really
muted?"
Anything else until something happens and they either get kicked out of their housing or.
What do you mean, like stuck in housing?
Because then once you have housing, they're just like. You have housing, then you don't, unless you want to keep going and like getting a case manager and like seeking employment and doing all that, you're not going to because you have housing now, you know, and housing doesn't necessarily require employment sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's like.
So has that been your experience from the people you know? They get housing and they don't go get employment?
So check this out. I had housing at one point in time, and I took this assessment, and because my vulnerability level dropped and my at-risk level dropped, they took it away from me. It's for people with high risk, at risk level of, or for like the, you know, whatever, high risk level people. So as soon as it dropped and they did an assessment on me, they took my voucher away, and then I was back on the street.
Yeah, so they punished you for doing better.
Yes.
That's kind of been my assumption going into this project. They're punishing people
Why would they do that?
who get housing once they start doing better by taking away your housing. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly.
They reward you if you're doing bad, right?
Exactly. It just doesn't make sense. Just seems like even the housing, like I said, I got into the housing, I started doing better, and then.
I want to stop it right there. So they're punishing people for doing better. I mean, there are so many homeless silos out there, service silos. So you've got rapid rehousing, you've got first step housing, you've got Section 8 voucher housing, you've got permanent supportive housing. There's all these housing programs for the homeless now, because I saw a graph the other week where it shows that we've gone from this model of temporary shelters, spending most of the money on homelessness for temporary shelters, which is essentially warehousing the homeless, and we've moved to this model of permanent supportive housing, and which is absolutely more humane, dignified. You're no longer warehousing the homeless, you're putting the homeless in more secure housing. They have their own place. But the problem is the strings attached are, if you get a job, you're very likely to lose that housing. You're very likely to then be in the housing market that we have today in Salt Lake City, which is outrageously expensive, where you cannot find anything in the valley to rent for less than, I think you're very lucky to find anything less than $1,200. And my question for you, Rob, is this a problem you run into in your program?
Well, each individual problem is unique, as we know. I know permanent supportive housing, I'm by no means an expert in housing at all, but we employ a lot of the homeless, so we see these and we help individuals on a daily basis. And I know with permanent supportive housing, they don't actually take your housing from you if you get a job, but you do have to pay rent, and it's a percentage of whatever you earn, up until the point where you are paying, what an apartment would cost. So you reach
but the
that
goal,
point.
even with permanent supportive, is to get them independent, isn't it?
Absolutely, to get them out of there and to get them into, we had one individual, he started with a few hours a week. That's all he could work. A lot of our homeless guys can't work full-time jobs. Yeah. So they'll start off working a few hours a week and move up. This guy moved up through the company and became a full-time benefited supervisor for our company, doing really good. And he was staying at 100% supported housing, and got to the point where he was paying as much as he would for an outside apartment. And he was angry about that. And said, why would I pay this much to stay here with all these other homeless people when I can go get my own apartment? And we're like, yeah, you should get out there and do that. But there was this fear of getting out, stepping outside of this umbrella of help and falling, and it just kind of drove him to start using again. And then so he ended up losing the job, but he kept his housing. So I do know that this does happen a lot, but I do know they just don't really pull the rug out from underneath you in a lot of these programs. They give you a phase down program. So you're phasing into higher rent, higher expectations, and as you feel comfortable to move up through permanent supportive housing, which was established as Housing First, which is a good thing.
Yeah, the principles of Housing First, they all sound great. Like, work on your addiction, work on your psychological disorders inside housing, not on the streets. That absolutely makes sense. Yes. But what I see in the projects such as the Magnolia project, which was the latest one built by Salt Lake County, is these are apartments that would rent on the free market for $2,000 a month. Quartz countertops right in the middle of downtown, a balcony. And if you're on the streets using drugs and you have not got those problems solved, and you suddenly get an apartment, you are then a drug addict in a really nice apartment. And what they found through that Magnolia is nobody is getting off drugs, and everybody in that place uses drugs. And so it just seems to me that you've got to have rungs. You've got to say, okay, you can now get a very secure tiny home that you can put all your stuff in and you can go to work. And that should be the first step. And then slowly you get better and better incremental housing. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely do. We've said this all along, and obviously I'm an employer. So, we measure success in my company by people who stay employed and move on to better employment. And I believe that Housing First is a good premise to get people off the streets, get them into a place. But I think that there needs to be, as you said, these rungs at this next step. And we need to encourage them to move along through these steps and eliminate those barriers. There's mental health, there's drug and alcohol addiction, there's physical disabilities
and the carrot could be every barrier you remove, whether it's addiction or psychological, where you can work more and more hours. The incentive is you get in a little better housing, just as the free market. And a homeless guy on the street in Sugar House Park explained that to me. Why can't I get rewarded for a clean UI, a clean urine analysis, or UA? And I was like, you mean you can't get rewarded in terms of your bed? No, I get punished. He's like, if I have clean UAs for long enough, he says, then I'm potentially not going to be a candidate for permanent supportive housing. Does that make sense?
It does, and It doesn't, because a lot of times people who are in permanent supportive housing, there is no expectations for them. They don't UA them on a daily basis. They don't do this stuff. So I'm not sure where that information comes from.
Well, I think he was thinking to initially qualify for permanent supportive housing, he needed to be a drug addict.
No.
And on the streets.
No, that's not it. And there's a wait list. Obviously,
but
there's not
but
not enough housing first.
But if you get clean, aren't you taken off the wait list?
No, absolutely not.
You're not?
No,
Oh,
you're not. To get into housing, any type of housing, there's no drug testing involved in it. You are the criteria for getting into permanent supportive housing is being chronically homeless.
Oh, just being homeless.
Yes. So once you're homeless and you're chronically homeless, suffering, I don't know, the definition changes, but basically if you are deemed chronically homeless, you go onto this wait list.
Yeah, which means you've been on the streets long enough to qualify.
Yes.
I think he probably thought by being on the streets, I'm going to survive that by using drugs, which most homeless people I meet are.
Well, I don't know.
It's like
there is a lot of drug use. There's a lot of alcohol use. There's a lot of mental illness.
Yeah.
That goes with those who are.
And
homeless.
a lot of them are really, they say, self-medicating their mental illness, because I've kind of figured this out now. It's like a lot of them say they have ADD, and what do you use to treat ADD? Adderall. And what is the street drug for Adderall? It's meth or crack,
right.
or it's just kind of a stimulant. And so you say you take these people on no matter how addicted they are, psychological disturbed they are?
Oh, absolutely. That's our mission, is to employ people with disabilities or barriers to employment. And all these are barriers that we try to help eliminate. So we hire them on, and we partner with community partners out there, VOA, Voc Rehab, DWS. We work with these other agencies to get them help to eliminate barriers while they're employed and working for us. So they can start off working just a few hours a week and move up, and we move them into better positions with higher pay. So we reward them as they go. And some of the companies that we work with, they will hire our individuals once they've stabilized. So we work with community partners like, Amazon and Sweets and Nicholas Foods and Intuitech. These are companies who are willing to give people another chance. I know, like Jiffy Lubes and a lot of construction companies. Awesome. They look past the police records. They look past the issues. We're in this phenomenon of an era where have the workers gone? Everybody is shorthanded, and so everybody needs workers. And so our goal is to tap into this niche, this group, this population that hasn't been tapped into, help them stabilize, and even before they find housing, we're trying to find them even better jobs.
Yeah.
Which will make it easier for housing. Like you said, there is no affordable housing out there. It is ridiculous when it comes to rent and what they qualify for.
So what can you say is your success rate per individual that you bring in, and what's the reason why most of them end up dropping out?
Well, our success rate, again, we measure success by staying employed or moving to better employment. And I'm retired Army, so everything is data-driven for our company. We keep data, statistics, and we put out reports at least 2-3 times a year on our success and our numbers. And so right now we're hovering around a 70% success rate.
Oh, that's amazing.
And what that just means is that people are staying employed with us, or they're moving on to better employment. We have seen that those who leave is because of their barriers. It could be, we start them out, they'll come to work, they'll get that first paycheck, it'll go into their arm or down their gullet, and they disappear. And so then they'll come back and they'll say, hey, can I have my job back? And we're like, yes, you can have your job back, knowing that they'll be more successful the longer that we invest in them.
Okay, so you don't fire them if they don't show up that second time.
They quit. It's a self-quit, but then they come back and we rehire them. So we've rehired people dozens of times. I mean, literally dozens of times. And each time they come back, we see that they are a little more successful. So we understand that sometimes at the beginning there's an expiration date where they will fall back into their own ways if they don't receive the help that they need, whether it's drug and alcohol counseling or whether it's mental health help, we find that they have an expiration date. And so we try to avoid that. We try to help them eliminate those barriers by getting them into our community partners for help. And, you know, if they fail and they stumble and they fall, we help them get back up and we give them another chance.
Yeah, it's right now. You know, we work with a lot of restaurants and small businesses. Every single small business I know, they need help. Every single one. And you go out in the streets and you see there's the workforce. They just need to get clean. And so, do you think what you are doing, any kind of small business could take a gamble on a homeless person, convicted felonies and drug addicted, and bring this person in, or are there real special considerations if you're working with people who are still addicted to drugs and still have psychological disorders?
Well, I believe they can get help while they're working, and we provide job coaching and mentors with our employees. So when we work with our community partners, they know they're not just getting another employee, they're also getting the help that comes with it. So if I'm out with Joe Schmo, and he's worked for me for 3-4 months, and he's stabilized and he's ready to move on to better employment, maybe get some benefits, maybe be full-time, we can go out and we can job develop and find these small companies, and then we can place them and even offer job support, on-the-job training, and come in and help out when there's issues. So the employers that we work with know that if there's an issue, that we will step in and help them with that employee.
And what is your theory as to why, since COVID, basically, there has been this massive labor shortage and so many people aren't working? What is causing that in your estimation?
That is the $64,000 question, isn't it?
Yeah,
Where have the workforce gone? And we've toyed around with ideas since COVID, and everybody wants to work from home. I mean, if you get on Facebook and people say looking for a job, preferably at home, you know, so people are looking for these at-home jobs where they don't have to go anywhere. Maybe they're TikTokers or trying to be an influencers, YouTubers, you know. I don't know. Our young generation is absent from the workforce. When you look at the workforce today, it's everybody over 40, you know.
It's younger.
Where's these younger people gone? Where is our future workforce? And a lot of them are working from home or trying to work from home. And so that's all we can figure. I mean,
yeah,
if you have the answer to that, then
when COVID started, I did a trip to Moab, and Moab, you know, is the influencer's paradise. Right. I mean, we all know about the Gabby Patinko. That was like the mecca for the van lifers. If you have a van and you want to have your life in a van, you go to Moab. And I go there right after COVID started, and all these employers are just lost their employees, and the park in the whole town is full of vans and van lifers. And they're all with their phones, and they're all just want to be the next big influencer. And it was like, I mean, what happened with that Gabby Patinko? I don't know if I'm saying her last name right, Pacheco, but that was, I mean, on steroids. It was just crazy how many people are doing that. And so, is that, I mean, as you work with all these people, getting people long-term invested into a career on it, not just a job, but a career, is that something you guys are involved with too?
Right. Anybody can get a job, but what do you want to be when you grow up? I mean, that's the ultimate question. What's going to make you happy? What are you going to want to do every day? You know, I love my job. I love what I'm doing. And I like to go to work. You know, I like to feel like I'm a part of something bigger. And that's what we're all born with, those 3 innate needs, right? The need to be loved, the need to be respected, and the love to be a part of something, or the need to be part of something larger. And so trying to get people back involved in community and life and get them out there, I mean, that is our goal with our employees. Like they've been shunned. They've been taken out of society, if you will. They've been deemed, you know, outcasts. And so now we're trying to get them back into society, and it's a process. It's a process that requires many steps and repeating steps.
Yeah. I had a guy on this program once named David Ibarra, and he and I agreed like more teenagers should take the dishwasher job, because when you have these sort of low status jobs that are really hard, you really start to appreciate the value of money and the value of working hard. And I had 3 dishwasher jobs when I was 15. And do you find that a lot of people, they just want to skip and take I should be the manager, I should be the boss, and the younger generation is especially prone to that?
I think so. I think we've raised an entitled generation. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just my opinion, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people, the market out there is just really crazy. We're trying to help people get their lives back, and we can't pay a lot. We're a nonprofit.
You take some government funding, or
less than 5% of our revenue comes from grants or donations. We are a social enterprise. The way
amazing.
We function, we go out, we get contracts, and then we hire our populations to fulfill those contracts. We lose the contract, we lose the employee. I've been a CEO of a couple nonprofits, and I've been in that arena, and I don't like it. I don't like relying on grants and donations in order to exist the next day. I think it'll make you old. And so when I took over this company, we really struggled to diversify our business, and now we are very successful. We're very profitable. We turn work away.
Wait, you're a profitable nonprofit?
Well, that's the biggest issue. Most people think that nonprofits can't make money, but every dollar we make goes back into programming. Yeah. But to be a nonprofit that has revenue in the black each year just means that you get to survive another year, and you need to
and you get to grow.
And you get to grow your populations, your investments in people, and your programming. And so that's what we do. And so but what I was saying earlier is, when you have McDonald's paying $16 to $18 an hour, who wants to come to work for minimum wage or for $10 an hour, $11 an hour? So people think that I'm just going to go that next step. We don't want to work for this pittance.
What do you start people out at?
It just depends. Our homeless programming all start out at minimum wage, and as they demonstrate the ability to work, we move them up to better paying jobs and better positions. So it's a model we developed. Mm-hmm. And most of our contracts are with the city, working with the homeless. The city is really invested in working with the homeless and utilizing the homeless to clean up the homeless areas. So a lot of our contracts are to work in these areas. We run different programs for the city, like the transitional storage program you were talking about earlier. And this is a program where people can store their belongings while they go out and look for work. And we've been doing this since 2013.
Okay.
So it's called the transitional storage program. The street name for it is a place for your stuff. Huh. And so we do that, or we clean up biohazard waste.
How come homeless people don't know about this? Because everybody I talk to, they say the cops come in, they take all their stuff, and they don't have a job because there's no way to secure their stuff.
I'm not saying that most of them don't know, or maybe they're just not interested in doing that.
But it's like a storage locker for.
Well, we use bins. Most people would call them the 90-gallon trash cans you have for your house. We have a warehouse with about 440 of these.
Wow.
And so they can bring their stuff in, they get a bin, they can store their stuff in the bin, they have to check in on it every once in a while, but that just frees up.
I guess they have to live kind of close to that.
But some of these camps are really large, and so there's too much stuff. I've seen bike shops moving around downtown.
Yeah.
So we run many programs to try and eliminate these barriers and to keep the area clean for the businesses as well as for the homeless. When these big camps come up, the city invests money to put bathrooms there so that they can have a place to go to the bathroom, and then our company monitors those bathrooms to make sure that they're safe.
The city has put in bathrooms in some of these.
All the time.
The camps that they end up abating.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, the city, like I said, the city is very invested in this issue and these problems. A lot of people point the finger at the city and everything that's going on in the city areas, but Salt Lake City itself, that's the mecca for where the homeless camps are. So there's a lot to do. And so the city takes a vested interest in doing this and hires out and contracts with us to go out there and, clean up the areas, pick up the garbage, trying to keep the neighborhoods clean and safe. Like you said earlier, with these homeless resource centers, the businesses around them complain that the people camp out around the blocks. We have mobile clean teams that will go in and clean up these areas as well, and it's funded by the city.
So you're not the health department crew that does you don't hire out the health department crew that does the abatements, do you?
They do use us to come in and help
okay.
pick up the garbage and stuff and camps. So they'll come in a lot of times for these big camps, and that's when we go in. So the big camps, they'll put no camping notices, and most people will pack up and they'll leave. Mm-hmm. And then we come in just mainly to pick up the garbage that's left behind afterwards.
Yeah, so the county health department does the big backhoe work, and we've recorded some of those abatements, and they're really sad. Especially, you've got some. I found some seniors who were living there just out of their RV, and they said, we're just so grateful for the city for allowing us to keep our RV here for a month because we just can't afford it. My wife's and his wife was sick, and it's like, do you think that there's this huge need for a sanctioned campground right now, or do you think that's a solution?
I think that could be a solution. We see other cities around the nation who do something like that. The tiny village is going to be something like that, mm-hmm. Which is something that I fully support. The tiny village is something that is really needed because I think there needs to be a balance when we do stuff like this. There has to be some sort of security and safety involved. So mm-hmm. when we see these camps, these bigger camps especially develop, there's a lot of problems with drug cartels mm-hmm. and violence and stuff that happens inside it. So there's a lot of
you
victims.
Have these predators. As
there's
I mentioned,
so many predators that come into these bigger camps.
I can tell who they are. It's like
so can we.
Yeah, you just walk down. I walked down 2nd South, and I went around the corner to Rio Grande, and they're the guys selling the drugs, and they're the guys who I watched a guy smack another guy and start a fight, and I was so sad yesterday. This African American homeless senior was hit in the head with a baseball bat, and it's just these people aren't getting locked up in prison, and
we've had many of our employees assaulted.
Really,
and that's a big issue. But you're right; these drug cartels, the predators, but even the predators aren't always the ones selling the drugs. Mm-hmm. The predators will make these individuals sell drugs. And so, not make them, but it's like they use them. So you want some free drugs, then you're going to sell drugs from me. So when the police come, I'm not arrested, you are. So, and then they prey on the weak, and so there's a lot of victims until they can stop the violence and these predators and the rapes and everything that happens in these bigger camps. These camps can't be sanctioned, and so there has to be some sort of structure to a sanctioned camp where there is help, but it's not like a police state. So there's got to be that balance of help that comes with those. And until I don't know who has the answers for that.
Yeah, I mean, they need to have the ground, and they need to probably lease ground, but they need to have a permanent security in place. But I mean, we've been finding this statistic it's from the Deseret News, that last year altogether $300 million was spent on the homeless population. And if you do the math, that equates to $55,000 per homeless individual. Do you think there's a better way to be spending that money than our current?
That's above my pay grade for sure. When we talk about working with individuals and the funding and what that funding goes towards, there has to be a balance, and there has to be, an accounting of where that money is spent and how it's spent and the need for it. And so I think affordable housing is one of our biggest things. But I mean, how do we crack that nut, right? There's just no money in it. You see a lot of these new buildings that are being built, and a certain percentage of their units are set aside for vouchers, and but there's nothing out there. I mean, if you look at the wait list that the city housing or the county housing have, their wait lists are astronomical. 3-5 year wait lists just to get into housing.
Wow.
And there's no affordable housing out there.
Well, one of the biggest problems I see, I talked to a guy who builds manufactured home communities, and he puts together trailer park, areas. And he said that back 50 years ago, about 35% of all housing was manufactured homes, which if you're building a home on an assembly line, it's way cheaper to begin with than if you're building a home, using our labor force right now. And the problem is you can't get any cities to sanction a manufactured home community because they have this stigma. But if that were allowed, it seems like you could drop the cost of housing dramatically, and you could get people who are, like earning minimum wage into housing that's far more affordable than the voucher system. I mean, the voucher system must be costing millions and millions for the city and the county and state, because that's just subsidizing really super expensive rent as it is.
Right. I think that's what the tiny village is.
Yeah, that basically, I mean, it's
just summarized what the tiny village is trying to do.
But the problem is only Salt Lake County is owning up to the problem. That needs to be in like all 11 counties along the Wasatch Front.
It needs to be, but the biggest issue with homelessness is in Salt Lake County.
Yeah. And they come to Salt Lake County.
Well, they come to Salt Lake County because that's where all the resources are.
Yeah, and they're even coming from Jackson Hole, apparently.
Apparently, they're busting them in.
Yeah, can you believe that? I saw that story, and then the judge wanted to deny that was happening regularly. This was just one instance where it was happening. But of course, I know I've been hearing the rumors that they were, when we solved homelessness in 2015, and that guy Pendleton was touring the country about how we solved homelessness by giving people free housing. 2016 is when they had to do Operation Rio Grande because we were flooded with homeless people.
Yes, we are kind of the mecca for the homeless at this point. But I mean, any major city is the mecca. So we just see wherever the resources are, that's where people are going to come to, and so all the resources that are in Salt Lake County need to be replicated outside of the county in order to.
Yeah, and I mean, I just see it as these cities become meccas because you can win the lottery of getting free housing. I mean, if you can prove you're chronically homeless, you can get the golden ticket and go stay at the Magnolia Apartments, which you could never afford if you were working at Walmart. I mean, do you see that as part of the problem?
Not really, since they don't know that the Magnolia is what they will now.
Yeah.
But most of it, Palmer Court was the old Holiday Inn.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's the perfect model for
240 units that were retrofitted to become single family and studio apartments.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is, like I said, the Housing First initiative is a great start. In my humble opinion, I think we need more rungs to climb.
Yeah.
More expectations.
Exactly.
So once they're stabilized, I believe that we want to get them out of that and moved on to something better. So then we create space for others who can come in behind them. Yeah.
So how can I tell all the homeless people who say they cannot get jobs anywhere how to get a hold of you and get a job?
They can. We are located on 8th South and 5th West, so we're right down there in the heart of everything. Most everybody knows about us.
There was a homeless camp right near there.
There's always a homeless camp. It's like whack-a-mole now. So, they move all over the place. But I don't think there's anybody out there who doesn't know of Advantage Services when it comes to our partners, VOA and the resource centers, APMP. Everybody knows.
So all these case managers are
all
already
these case managers know that we will hire everybody and anybody. And so all they have to do is have a valid ID and a Social Security card. They come down and we'll put them to work.
That's awesome. Well, I think it's a great thing you're doing, and I want to have the people who have advanced out of the subsidies and come on this program to talk about how they did it and help encourage more homeless people. I talked to a guy just yesterday who was on the streets since he was 15, and he's 32 now. And it's just unbelievable. His dad was homeless, and his mom was a prostitute and a drug addict, and it's like it's a sticky trap a lot of people get into, and it feels like it's difficult to get out. So it's awesome that you're actually out there helping people do it. So yeah, so thanks so much for joining us. And if you want to be a bigger part of the program, you can do it in one of two ways. You can either go to utahstories.com and subscribe to our free digital newsletter. It's absolutely free, and we send you the voice of local Utah to your inbox once a week. And if you don't open, oh man, let's pause. So sorry for that short, unexpected pause. My air compressor on my nail gun went off. But as I was saying, you can, I want to get to a question we actually had from a reader. Emily was asking if there was a way you could take your car into a homeless person who's perhaps a mechanic to do the job for you, if they offer that kind of service, or skilled homeless people offer services like that you know of, Rob?
I don't know of anything like that. I do know that this population is very resourceful, and even in these bigger camps, we see people setting up restaurants and stores in the homeless areas. So,
really?
And then there's a lot of vehicle camping, and I know there's a lot of individuals who are doing mechanic work for each other.
They're constantly working on bikes.
Constantly working on bikes.
There's bike parts in every shopping
bikes,
cart.
Yes, yes, shopping carts and bikes.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know about anything like that, but there are definitely skilled mechanics and tons of people with a lot of great skills out on the streets right now.
And here's the thing: there's a lot of people looking for mechanics out there. So if there's homeless people who have a skill set, who are ready to move on, you know, a starting company like ours can get you connected to some of these better places.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so thank you everyone for watching. If you want to be a bigger part of the program, you can go visit utahstories.com and subscribe to our free digital newsletter. We'll send you the voice of local Utah with all our awesome stories every single week. You can do that by visiting utahstories.com and then hit subscribe on the newsletter. Or if you want to have Utah Stories delivered right to your home, we print our print magazine. We got a lot of print subscribers recently, and I want to thank you very much for chalking up the $2 a month to subscribe to the magazine. Printing costs have gone through the roof, and we've decided we will keep printing this indefinitely because we are facing, whenever we do a controversial subject, Facebook will not let us promote it or get it out to our followers. And sometimes even YouTube has limits on what they're going to allow us to say, and it's just big tech censorship is real, and the best way to thwart big tech censorship is to subscribe to print magazine, to Utah Stories, and your local newspapers. So with that, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.